How do South Koreans feel about Squid Game? It's complicated. As the Korean Netflix series continues to take the world by storm, it's been met with mixed reactions on its home turf. From Coffee Prince to Jewel in the Palace to Crash Landing on You and countless other titles, Korean dramas have captivated international audiences for decades. But none have ever achieved the ubiquity of Squid Game, which shot to Netflix's #1 spot in 90 countries within 10 days of its release this September. A few weeks later, it became the streaming platform's most watched series, overtaking Bridgerton. You'd think, given all this, that Squid Game would be well received on its home turf too, especially since South Korea is the birthplace of scary shows like Sweet Home and Kingdom, as well as shocking, suspenseful films such as Alive, Train to Busan, Parasite, and Park Chan-wook's Vengeance trilogy. But the truth is more complicated than that. As it turns out, South Korean viewers are sharply divided over the show. Interestingly, the same qualities that make Squid Game an instant hit with non-Korean audiences may help explain the relatively lukewarm response from South Korea. The survival game genre feels all too familiar. Squid Game detractors have also lambasted the K-drama for being overly graphic, with some expressing regret at having watched the series at all. Pye-eun, a tutor based in Busan, says that while she enjoyed the series, many of her friends didn't like the content because it was too violent for their tastes, adding that she thought the show's depiction of the evil, selfish side of human nature was really repulsive to some Koreans. Other local viewers have complained that Squid Game's plot felt rather predictable, with scenarios and characters that were reminiscent of other K-dramas. A protagonist who isn't smart and doesn't have much, but still wins in the end because of his kind-heartedness. A sibling who sets out in search of his long-lost brother, only to find him right when he's about to die. Two lifelong friends who fight each other to the death, but end up breaking into tears and reconciling at the last minute. Many also take issue with the emotionally charged scenes in the show, viewing them as excessively sentimental and melodramatic. A characteristic known as Shimpa in Korean, which is often interpreted to mean tearjerker. Some international viewers have cited Gambu, the show's emotional 6th episode, as their favourite. But many Koreans who felt its scenes were too weepy and over the top panned it as a classic example of Shimpa. K-Shimpa is what foreigners love the most. Meanwhile, we Koreans who are used to K-Shimpa find it cringeworthy and have been criticising it, said one commentator on an online forum. That said, Dal Young-jin, a communication professor at Simon Fraser University, explains that some Koreans, especially older generations, liked the show's Shimpa aspect. Shimpa actually helps the success of the series, both nationally and globally, he tells me in an email. For Koreans who are in their upper 40s, 50s and 60s, this is a focal point that attracts them, And for global audiences, this kind of Shimpa is relatively new and even exotic. However, younger generations of Koreans who did not experience severe historical moments like the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the 1997 IMF crisis, and live with the digital technologies, don't understand this. According to Yoo Kyung-sun of the Korean daily Pyongyang Shinmun, some local critics have written that for overseas audiences, these attributes actually made Squid Game feel like a fresh and original thriller, and turned out to be selling points for the show outside of Korea. Korean news sites and YouTube videos are saying, "Why is the world crazy about Squid Game?" instead of, "This is a really good show," says Yun, the Busan-based tutor who, like many other Koreans, decided to watch Squid Game only after news reports of the show's overseas popularity piqued her interest. Stephanie Kim, a 31-year-old researcher at Seoul National University Hospital, agrees. "I think many Koreans were generally surprised that non-Koreans, especially non-East Asians, could relate to Korean social issues and values. But we should probably take these negative reactions with a grain of salt, even if some of them are coming from Korean pop culture experts. Many Koreans seem to have a strange tendency to experience tall poppy syndrome when someone or something from their country enjoys enormous popularity, be it BTS or Squid Game, and seem to relish downplaying their success. Personally, I know many Koreans who liked Squid Game, even if their opinions haven't found their way online. The show certainly has legions of fans in its home country. It debuted in Korea as the #2 show on Netflix and took the top spot just a day later. Maybe some elements of the show don't appeal to Squid Game's native country, but many Koreans, especially those who are middle-aged and older, grew up playing the children's games depicted on the show and have appreciated the deep sense of nostalgia it stirs in them. They've been simultaneously pleased and shocked to see their favourite games transformed into instruments of murder, with some remarking that the phrases that were commonly uttered in these games, like "you're dead," hit home for them like never before. The show taught even domestic audiences about unfamiliar aspects of their own culture. For example, by introducing them to the actual Squid Game, which many younger Koreans had never played, and explaining the real meaning behind the word ganbu, which locals often associate with the name of a Korean fried chicken chain. Despite being a tiny country with a population of about 50 million, South Korea produces tons of K-dramas every year. More than 100 were reportedly aired in 2020 alone. That's in addition to the plethora of documentaries, variety shows, and music-inspired TV programs that are also aired. Manhwa, the Korean equivalent of manga, and webtoons are also highly popular across age groups. All this means that unless the content is stellar and strikes a chord with audiences nationwide, it's often really hard to stand out in the South Korean market. Because of this surfeit of quality content, Koreans become amused or even dumbfounded when they see a particular film or TV show do extremely well overseas. And questions they tend to ask are, why Parasite? Or why Squid Game? The unprecedented success of Squid Game has, though, sparked some unique concerns from both Korean and international fans, who worry that K-dramas, which are appealing in part because they rarely feature violence and sex, are becoming increasingly violent and explicit. But K-drama fans probably need not worry. South Korea is still making dramas across a wide range of genres, including romantic comedies, which remain popular among Korean and international audiences alike. So, while Squid Game may indeed inspire a greater number of horror, thriller and sci-fi K-dramas, the continued demand for more traditional genres suggests that we can also expect a wider diversity of K-dramas in the future, one in which viewers will be certain to find plenty of shows that suits their own tastes.